Welcome to Bottle Rocket with Elena Sucheva, your top hockey podcast. Welcome back to Bottle Rocket. I'm Elena, joined as always by Maven Teabag. Today we're joined by Gordon Stafford, longtime director of girls hockey and girls head prep coach at Shattuck-St. Mary's in Minnesota. Under his leadership, the program has won 17 national championships. Gordon, great to have you.
Well, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me. I certainly enjoy talking to Stan, and I enjoy talking about Shattuck. So it's going to be a perfect time.
Gordy, why don't you start off in explaining all about Shattuck and why Shattuck is so famous? You've been there 25 years.
I think what Shattuck was the first to do was to combine a prep school with a sort of for lack of a better word, a club hockey model. So hockey became a two-season sport at Shattuck. Generally, when you play prep schools in the U.S., they have sort of the traditional school seasons of fall, winter, and spring. What Shattuck did back in the late mid-90s was they split apart from the Minnesota High School League and were a school that registered USA Hockey. So then they gave their kids a chance to play hockey from September all the way through April. And then just over the course of time, I think the real thing that put it over the top was when they hired JP Parisi, the longtime NHL player, and who at the time had retired and was living in Minnesota after having been coaching, I think, assistant coach with the Minnesota North Stars. And they hired him, and his son Zach was a phenomenal youth player, obviously as borne out by his success in the NHL over the years. And it had a bit of a Pied Piper effect, where they he brought in his friends and good players and that, and then it morphed into eventually in 2002, Sidney Crosby came, and because of Sidney Crosby, then Jonathan Toews came, and then it's gone all the way up through everybody from Nathan McKinnon to most recently Macklin Celebrini, and now Jackson Lacombe, who was just named to the Olympic team. So I think it all started back with JP Parisi, and Zach Parisi kind of got the ball rolling.
The thing that amazes me is your son was an NHL player as well. We had him in Jersey.
Right. Yep. I think his life changed when we came to Shattuck for a number of reasons, and I think the first is that it allowed me as a father who was around hockey to just be a dad and not have to coach, because his first coach at Shattuck was JP, and then he had Tom Ward, and he also had a strength coach, Murray Eves, who's the Eves family. Mike Eves played in the NHL. Murray played a little bit in the NHL for the Winnipeg Jets back in the early 80s. But yeah, just a phenomenal group of mentors at Shattuck that I think, at that age, a kid, if you're given the right, if you have the right God-given talent and you have the right work ethic, if you get the right mentors in there, it's great. And he was very fortunate to have that.
So Shattuck has become a pipeline for elite talent. What makes that environment so special?
I think it's with anything else. It's the people. The people. I think we have the infrastructure where we have 3 rinks right on campus. So if I'm a kid that's hockey is my passion, I can go to school all day, and I can walk to the rink, and we have skills coaches, and we have the weight room, and we have all sorts of opportunities there, and so there's that aspect of it. Whereas most elite kids, they need to play club hockey where they have kind of their hockey friends and their school friends. Whereas at Shattuck, your hockey friends are your school friends. And then I think we've done a good job of hiring and maintaining really good coaches who are in it for the right reasons. And we have former college coaches, former NHL coaches, who have decided that at their core they're coaches and they want to teach young people or coach young people hockey, and 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 then balance that with family life as well. Because as you know, Stan, if you dedicate your life to hockey, it's just almost a fact of life where your family almost has to take a back seat. Where I think at Shattuck, with with that sort of high school formula, these really good coaches are allowed to coach elite players, but still be good fathers and mothers as well, and that's great.
Do the players have to maintain a grade point average to be able to play hockey?
Oh yeah, that's a non-negotiable. We are very intentional about the families and the kids that we bring in. We're very process oriented, so we want good families. We want good, hardworking kids, and so we rarely, if ever. I mean, I've been at it at Shattuck 26 years. I've never had a kid in all that time be in academic trouble. So, but they have to maintain that. Yep.
As a historian, I have to mention the first time I heard about women's hockey. And believe it or not, this was about 1946. And Max Bentley, who was one of my idols, Hall of Famer with the Blackhawks and then the Maple Leafs, and 1 year with the Rangers. I was reading about Max and his family, and his brother Doug's a Hall of Famer. And in my reading, I found out that there was 6 Bentley daughters. They had their own hockey team. I couldn't believe this. Wow. I mean, first of all, to have 6 daughters who were playing hockey, and they were great. They were all great. And of course, in Delisle, Saskatchewan, you had hockey from October. Everything was natural ice. And I said, well, how come when the girls are playing hockey? How come the sisters are playing hockey? Well, of course, they were great. And the second thing that really knocked me over, and of course then became a fan of women's hockey, was watching, and until then I really had no idea how good it was. It was watching Canada against America in the Olympics. And what a phenomenal game. I was knocked for a loop again. You probably know now I get easily knocked from loops, but they were that was it. And now then I realized, hey, this is the real McCoy, or real Mrs. McCoy, whatever you want to put it. Anyhow, so that's when I got to realize how great women's hockey had become. When did you discover it?
Well, to be honest, I hadn't thought very much about women's hockey until I switched over from the boys' side at Shattuck in 2004, and so that's really when I became immersed in sort of the ethos of women's hockey. But I was, if you look back over your life and how what seemed to be coincidences turn out to be not so much. The year that I started girls hockey was the year that the Lamoureux twins came to Shattuck. They were the first 2 kids that I recruited to Shattuck, and they were literally the first 2 female hockey players that I was on the ice with as a coach, and they were just cut from a different cloth, And people they've asked me a number of times over the years, what are there commonalities between elite high school girl hockey players, and I say the first is they have to have brothers who they kind of get punted around a little bit in the backyard with their brothers, right? They have to have fathers when I say this tongue in cheek, who thought their daughters were sons, and treated them like they're just athletes and they just go play, but their fathers never once treated them as, they're athletes who happen to be female, put it that way. So those two aspects, and then obviously having the opportunity. So when I started coaching the Twins, that was my standard as far as how girls hockey can play. And then, you talk about the institution of Shattuck and the standard that we've set. They came, and then Amanda Kessel came, Phil Kessel's sister came. She was a phenomenal player for the USA, and she's an Olympian. And then Brianna Decker recently inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. So you get that you get that progression of kids, and then we just kind of took off from there.
Are young female players today more skilled or just better developed earlier?
I think there used to be, the way I would say it, that there used to be, a select amount of what, like A+ players, right? And then there were a lot of B players, right? No, I don't mean, like really like phenomenally skilled players. And most of those had played with boys up until the time that they came to Shattuck. What I'm seeing these days, there's a few, with the Olympics coming up here, you will see the Canadian team is gone, and they're going to be a little bit older. So, Marie-Philippe Plan and all these girls are phenomenal players over the course of time. But with the U.S. team, you're going to see, Abby Murphy and Taylor Heisey and Kirsten Sims and Caroline Harvey and Erin Frankel. You're going to see the up and coming, the best of the U.S. And so I think girls, and it's sort of a long answer to your question, is I think the problem, and you might probably have seen this too, Stan, in the boys game, it's become so much of just individual skill. Individual skill is awesome, right? But that skill needs to be, in order to win, that skill needs to be underneath the structure of the team. And not as many of these younger kids are willing to buy into the structure of the team. Whereas girls, I have found, they want to do what you ask them to do, right? So they're more prone to, they're very much more coachable. It's just so much fun to coach girls. It's amazing.
I have a 16-year-old granddaughter who's playing for Culver Academies. And what I'm interested in knowing is, for a 16-year-old girl and a 16-year-old boy playing hockey, is how different are the rules between boys hockey and girls hockey?
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because there's a whole debate. The PWHL now is allowing body checking. Now, they're not allowing open ice hits, right? But they're allowing rub outs along the boards, and they're allowing body contact. Okay. So, just even over the last couple of years, it's changing, where it's, what I have found is girls in general are not allowed to express aggression physically, right? Like if we walked into a typical high school and a couple of boys were wrestling around, we would just say, oh, that's boys, right? But if that was two girls, we'd be like, oh my God, what's going on, right? So when the girls in hockey, it's a physical sport. It's physical. You're entitled to your ice within the rules, right? But boys just naturally know how to brace themselves for contact. Boys just naturally know, it's like in the movie Christmas Story. There's I dog dare you, then I double dog dare you, then I triple dog dare you, right? Girls have no necessarily sense of of the sort of the progression of aggression, if you put it that way, right? So you have to teach them, you're entitled to your ice. You got to brace yourself for hits, but it is a physical sport. I mean, you watch women's hockey in the Olympics this year. It's so fun to watch, and it's different than the men's game. It's like women's basketball to me is a different sport than men's basketball. Women's tennis is a different sport than men's tennis, just because there's more, it's like there's almost more skill, there's more strategy, just because women can't dunk, they can't serve the ball 120 miles an hour, right? And the same is with women's hockey. So I would never be an advocate of full scale body checking in women's hockey, because I think it takes away a little bit from the unique nature of the strategic brain of female athletes. But also, I think the physicality kind of will take away from that a little bit.
That's why growing up with the brothers, right? It teaches you toughness. You have to be tough.
Right. And I will always advocate for, you're entitled to your ice, and you need to be physical, but I just don't think open ice hitting, the days of, Scott Stevens and and those kind of things are over anyway, which is really, really good, but I just would not want to see that, those kind of things happen in women's hockey anyway.
What does women's hockey still need most to keep growing?
Well, I think it is the fastest growing demographic in USA hockey. I mean, I was a little bit taken aback this last U18 World Championships, where Canada and the US kind of dominated, and Finland and Finland and Sweden and Czechia is starting to come up, but I think worldwide, I don't know if it speaks to the willingness of the Canadian and American hockey community to financially support women's hockey more so maybe than the Europeans. I mean, that's just a thought. I have no ability to back that up at all. But I was hoping that, as much as I want the U.S. to win, and that I think I would have thought by now that Sweden and Finland and these other countries would be better, But in the U.S., I think they just have to keep, supporting it and giving opportunities, I think, for high-level girls to excel and to keep growing the sport. It's almost kind of like the Wayne Gretzky effect in Los Angeles. Keep growing the sport in kind of quote unquote non-traditional areas, and then you get more and more kids playing.
Am I leaking a secret when I say you're working on a book?
Well, I am. Actually, you more than you would think, you've been a help in that. It's. I mean, you've put out like almost 50, so you know what I'm. Yes, I am, and I'm in the editing process now. I have an editor and trying to figure out, but I don't know if you even remember saying this, but you said to me that I just need to get it out there, right? Like, it's not going to be perfect, and I have to resign myself to that. It's not going to be perfect, but you have to get it out into the world, and then you'll see. So yes, I'm hoping to have it out by March or April. Yes.
What's it about? Tell us.
It's the title is The Journey and Its Rewards: Stories and Observations from a Lifetime in Hockey. So it sort of goes through some stories of childhood and my experience in junior hockey, goes there more into my experience as a coach and the things that I've learned, and then coaching girls specifically, and then just over the course of time, I don't know about you, Stan. I feel like you kind of have, you have a unbelievable memory to recall things. What I've done over the last number of years is, with I just have always taken notes. I've been an English teacher. You know, I've taken notes, and then recently on my phone, I've discovered you can just take out your phone and speak into the phone. Yeah, so a lot of it is just, you know, philosophical sort of observations about winning and losing and coaching and players and parents and so it's kind of all just all of those observations.
Looking forward to it.
Well, thank you, thank you. That's the thing is sometimes when you have a goal for yourself, it's better to keep it to yourself, and then once you get it out into the world, then you have to complete it. So that's where I'm at. But I'm in good shape, just trying to get it right.
Can you tell us more about your growing up and playing, and where you played, who you played for?
Sure. I grew up in Banff, Canada, and so that's in the Canadian Rockies. So, I mean, it's when I look back now, I had an idyllic childhood. I really did. I mean, we were in the mountains. You know, all my friends played hockey. You know, and it's just what you did. I mean, I don't recall starting hockey. I don't recall who taught me to skate. I just have never in my life remembered not skating, right? You know, and we had an outdoor rink that was literally 2 blocks from our house, and it was a small town, and you know, he played with the same 9 or 10 guys growing up my whole life, and I kind of took to hockey. My older brother Barry, who was actually a Hall of Fame equipment manager with the Edmonton Oilers, and won 5 Stanley Cups as equipment manager for the Edmonton Oilers. I think looking back, I think my mom, you know, back in the day, it was old kids get outside, right? Like get outside. So I think my brother was responsible for me. So I played a lot of hockey with kids on the pond, with kids 5, 6 years older than me. And I think that made me better. I played midget hockey in Calgary, did well there. And then I ended up playing for Billings in the Western Hockey League for 3 years. I played for Dave King. Stan, you might have met Dave King over the years. He was a very influential coach for me. At the time that I was eligible, I was able to sign, and I signed as an underage player with the Edmonton Oilers. And at that time, they had just there was this pretty good kid they thought was going to be the next great player. His name was Wayne Gretzky. So I happened to go to training camp, his second training camp, and he was pretty good. So I happened to be the same age as Mark Messier and Wayne and Paul Coffey and Yari Curry. In fact, I saw a lot of those guys I was wearing when Brandon Decker was inducted in the Hockey Hall of Fame. I saw a lot of those guys, so it was kind of cool. But I never actually made the Oilers. I was always played in the minors. So one year I played in the minors in Wichita for the Wichita Wind. That was in the old Central League. Stan, you might remember that. You might be one of the only ones who remembers that. But Ace Bailey was my coach. Garnet Ace Bailey was my coach. John Muckler was my coach.
Oh, I know.
That was kind of cool. And then I got sent down to Milwaukee in the IHL. So I played in the IHL for the most of my career. Then I actually knew that I wasn't going to be an NHL player by that point, and I went to school and went to college. Got my degree in secondary English education and sports psychology, and ended up teaching English and coaching hockey in Milwaukee. And then I went up to Canada to coach in the Alberta Junior Hockey League for the St. Albert Saints. Their most famous coach was Doug Messier. And then I ended up coming back down to the U.S. From a phone call from J.P. Parisi, and I've been here ever since. So it's been quite the ride. One of the first lines in my book is everything I have in my life I owe to hockey. So and that's true. Yep.
That's my life too.
Yeah, I know.
I owe everything to hockey.
Yeah.
Your brother could probably write a book about his time with the Oilers.
Oh man, he should write a book. I'm telling you. But you know what? And again, I keep going referencing back to Stan. You know, those trainers, Stan, the thing, especially back in those days, the things that they probably saw. And my brother, he's as dedicated as it is that what happens in the room stays in the room. So I mean, he'll take some of those things to his grave just out of loyalty to the boys. But even the stories that he could tell, oh man, you're exactly right. I've told him so many times he should just set up a telephone, a cell phone recorder and just start telling stories. Because man, yeah.
Send them over to me.
Yeah. Oh, you and he, man, you guys could talk forever, Stan.
Well, the thing that whenever guys talking about Messier and Gretzky and coffee, and I always say, you guys don't get it. The real Oiler is my buddy Kevin Lowe. And when the Rangers won the cup in '94, everybody was talking about Messier, blah blah blah. But
Yeah.
Kevin Lowe was the guts of that Stanley Cup team, and of course he was tremendous. He was tremendous when he was with Edmonton. Love the guy. Great guy.
Yeah. Oh, to this day, I mean, he's been very supportive of my brother Barry, who has been he's been very, very supportive. But you're right. You know what? When you were saying that, Stan, you know what it reminded me of a lot is that the real the players that are real, right? The ones that are not posers, the Gretzkys and the Messiers, and even up through my experience now at Shattuck, between my son Drew, obviously he's my son, so I have an affinity there. But I taught Zach, I taught Sydney, I taught Johnny Taves, I taught Macklin Celebrini, and they're all just genuine people. Like it's almost a cliche, he's a great player, but he's an even better person. But I think that, and again, how many of that you would say that the real greats, that you've seen, I've gotten to know Brian Trottier pretty well over the years. I've gotten to know, they're just genuinely good people. They really are. And then all the kids that come up that are going to flame out, there's just something about them that you can just tell when you've been around them that they just don't have whatever the secret sauce is, which is you have to be a genuine human being, to make it. So that's pretty cool. But Kevin Lowe, I mean, there's a little excerpt in my book about that is how, I call myself and a number of other guys when we were at Oilers camp, we called ourselves the Ham and Eggers, right? Just like the guys that were kind of filling out the roster a little bit. But those guys like Paul Coffey and Wayne, to this day, and Mark they're just so welcoming and so, if you put that Oiler jersey on, it didn't matter if it was a exhibition game at the University of Alberta, you were an Oiler, and that I still to this day remember that.
Speaking of nice people, did you ever come across people who were not as nice and difficult to deal with?
I always had a problem. You don't name names, but I always had a problem with guys that thought they were good just because they were on a good team. Here's this is a good story. I think it's a good story. Davey Hunter. Okay. So he was a third, fourth liner with the Stanley Cup teams. Right. And I looked at it, when I thought I was a, better player than Davey Hunter. Right. And he kept making the team every year, and this is a compliment to him. So, and I asked my brother, I said, how does Dave Hunter keep making the team? And my brother said, Mr. Miyagi in Karate Kid, right? Mr. Miyagi, wax on, wax off. Well, the Oilers, they have the Messiers and they have the Gretzkys, and they have the Currys, right? What they need is a player that the coach can rely on. And Davey Hunter, he gets the puck out, he gets the puck in. He gets the puck out, he gets the puck in. That's his job. He does it well, and that's how he made the team. So a guy like that just, and they had guys like that, like Kevin McClellan and Marty McSorley, and again, those teams that win, yes, you have the marquee players, but everyone, and that's what the wonder of hockey as a team sport, right? Is you interview those guys after those games, and they'll point to, the like the John Pinellis of the world, and those kind of guys that are well, JP was like that too, but he got a big goal there for the Islanders there, but just the supporting cast. So guys that, to me, I always had a hard time with I call them posers, right? They're just, they get their, you might not be Connor McDavid, but it's good to be on Connor McDavid's team when you go to the bar, put it that way.
You touched a nerve and make it a very good point. The nerve was the 1984 final. And the guy you mentioned was Kevin McClellan. I was doing all the Islander games then, right through the dynasty, and Kevin scored the goal in that first game. I can still see it. In fact, I'm about to burst into tears right now. But that was the turning point in the long run for the series, and he was a hell of a role player. A hell of a role player.
Yeah, and I think they traded that one year with Detroit. They got Mike Krushelnyski. I mean, he was huge, and then, Semenko was getting a little bit older, so Marty was in there, playing, kind of bodyguard kind of thing. And yeah, they had, they had a really, really good Craig Muni and Steve Smith and all those kind of, 5 and 6 D men that you could rely on. Yeah, I mean, but I mean the Islanders leading up to that, they had the sort of the same thing, and I think the Oilers would not have become the Oilers had the Islanders not been the Islanders. Put it that way.
So I'm wearing my Minnesota Fighting Saints shirt.
All right.
I wore it yesterday too, so I'm kind of giving myself away that I didn't wash it. But I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about the Quinn Hughes trade, because I'm in Vancouver.
Well,
Quinn Hughes trade.
And we kind of were talking about this before we went on the air. There is that it has just breathed. I think it's breathed life into Quinn Hughes, which when you're a good player on a losing team, I think that's just hard. It's just hard. And then, but it's also breathed life, not life. It's given the Wild the spark that they needed. And then, I have sort of watched Quinn Hughes, from afar, but watching that kid every day, it's just, wow, what a player. And so I think the Wild have the pieces in place, with Kaprizov now that they've signed, and that I think, but that's so competitive. I mean, Colorado is really good. Edmonton is not going away, and it's so many of these players, like, veering away from hockey a little bit to the debate over the last little while about, are the Buffalo Bills wasting Josh Allen, that sort of idea, and I think what does put players over the top is championships. I mean, once you've made all the money, more money than you're ever going to spend, like, you want to win a championship. So, and it's hard. Back to a JP Parisiism, Stan. JP, sometimes the other team wants to win too.
Listen, you mentioned about You know, if a good player's on a losing team, as a coach, and you got a team in a slump, what's the way? How do you get them on track again? And or is there some way, some secret way to do it?
Well, I'm not trying to pump my own tires, but I haven't really ever been on any one of those. But what I will say is this: my general message always is, and I believe this in, general, um, is trying to live as much of your life as you can in the present, and not carrying sort of the weight of the past, and not worrying too much about a future that hasn't happened. And I think, to me, one of the great advantages of hockey is that you're only on the ice, you know, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, right? If you're a D man, maybe in the second period, you might get caught out there over a minute if you can't get the puck out of your own arms. But anyway, you have a finite amount of time, right? And then you come back to the bench, and if you work on your breathing, and you work on, being fully present in the joy of the game, it always has to come back to a love of the game. If you don't, it's anything you do. If you don't love it, you're not able to pursue it to your fullest ability. So I think one of the benefits of the teams that I've coached over the years is I've always told them, like, every shift is an opportunity, right? So regardless if you scored or you didn't score, the referee might be bad, the ice might be bad, my line mates aren't passing the puck, but I love this game, right? And if you hop over the boards, and that's what's in your heart, I mean, then just go as hard as you can. And I learned that too, because when I was I was a good player in the IHL, which is kind of the second minor league down from the NHL, right? So, but when I was played above that, I was either a fourth line player that wasn't getting very much ice time or whatever, and I used to brood. I would brood. I would think about it and think about it and think about it, right? And it wasn't until I was married and my wife said, you have your family here. You can't be brooding around the house when there's nothing that you can do. So that's where I learned, the only time you could do anything about it is when you're on the ice. So that's when I learned how to practice harder. That's when I learned how to in the old IHL, I mean, we played 4 games in 4 nights, and I mean, there was a lot of hockey. But again, that's a long answer. But I think it's just having the discipline to just use your time on the bench, not to worry about the past, not to fret about the future, but to be very intentional and present in the shift that you have. And then, then whatever happens is the best thing that can happen, right?
In 1940, I was 8 years old, and I was in the Tompkins Park Library in Brooklyn, and I found a hockey book. That in itself was miraculous. The book was written by Red Dutton, a Hall of Famer who was a Western Canadian. But in the book, he had 2 words at the beginning and 2 words at the end, which always remained in my head as an inspiration. And the 2 words were "keep punching."
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I tell my kids, I liken it to arm wrestling. When you have an arm wrestle, when you know you're going to win, or when you know you're going to lose, some people just let their arm go down, right? And some people are going to, even if they're losing, they're going to look you in the eye and they're going to make you put them down. And that's, you go down swinging. That's what you do, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
As for coaching in women's hockey, do you find that there's still a prejudice among coaches? Maybe they don't want to coach women's hockey. They think it's a inferior product. Or do you run across that still?
It's hard to because all coaching at the minor level is all volunteer, right? So you you have to give kudos to the people that volunteer their time. But I think that there is, there is a dearth of coaches that kind of understand um, females, females in general. I think you run into it, like for example, you might run into it with referees as much too. Like you'll get referees that are used to coaching female or male games, right? And they either won't let anything go, right? Where they're calling all sorts of penalties, and you're trying to tell them, no, it's female hockey is physical, they're entitled to their ice, or they let everything go, and then girls don't know really a lot of times how to adjust to that. So that's been big. I think with girls, it's I've said there's a saying about that people don't care what you know until they know that you care, and I think with girls that's times 10. They have to know that you care. And so it's, again, cliche things, but you're not coaching hockey, you're coaching people. And then I think for me, girls competitiveness is much more sort of closer to their heart and their soul. They're just very competitive people, but they hold it inside. Where when I was coaching boys, if we were playing a big game, it would always be, okay, we got to keep our emotions, right? We can't take dumb penalties early in the game, because guys would come out there and be flying around like idiots, and you'd have to, control their emotions. When for a big game for girls, it's always the message is always, you've worked hard, you belong here, you've earned this. The other team wants to win, but it's helping them sort of believe in themselves. And I never in my time, there are no cocky female athletes. They're just not. They're humble, and hardworking, and team oriented. It is definitely, if you're raised around sort of and I have a son, so I love boys too, and I'll defend boys and their athleticism, and whatever that kind of archetypical masculinity of boys. I think we need to preserve that. But I think as far as competitiveness is concerned, I think girls are when they're in that mode, when they're in that zone, it's just phenomenal to watch. It's phenomenal to watch.
How do you feel about the new professional league, the PWHL?
Yeah, PWHL. Yep.
It's future ever.
I don't know. Right now, it's owned by one entity, right? And so that entity, I don't know what the name of it is, but it's one owner, and then each of the teams is a franchise, so that each of the teams doesn't have a separate owner. So one person is absorbing the, not one person, but one company or whatever is absorbing the cost right now. And they've had some phenomenal attendance in a number of the games. So to me, it's going to be, does it have staying power? So they expanded this year, and they're going to expand, I think, next year. And I think that's going to be a fine line to make sure that they keep the product as competitive as they possibly can in order to grow the game. So, I think it's a great idea. I just hope that they nurture it in the right way, that it organically grows, because they've been getting 10, 12, 14, 16,000 people at I think they had almost a sellout at Madison Square Garden, or even that's coming up maybe in the next little while here. So that's pretty cool to see. But can they maintain that over the course of time? Like you were talking, Stan, about the WHA, right? Like I think they found out that the hockey world was just not able to sustain that many professional teams. And I think it's the same sort of thing in women's hockey.
Yeah.
Gordon, what role do coaches play in keeping girls in sport during tough teenage years?
Well, that's a great question. I think we have to be, as adults, we have to be aware of the influence of technology for sure, especially with young female athletes, and you know, the whole balance with them of cooperation and competitiveness and sort of societal expectations. So to give them the opportunity to be young people and to experience all the things that young people want to experience as they go through their adolescent life, but also give them a place of where they can where they are respected and given the opportunity to become the best athletes that they can be. So yeah, I think it gets back to and I think you get into teaching anything, you get into mentoring. It's not, you don't get into it for, you understand the idea of delayed gratification, and you have to be sort of all in, and be able to balance all the aspects that these kids are going through in their lives right now, you know.
Social media affects, do you think more girls or boys, or is it kind of the same? The constant comparison online?
I mean, obviously, I work at Shattuck, and so I have I think the kids that we attract are kids and parents who are parents that want their kids to rise above that, and kids that don't want to be dragged into sort of that phenomenon. That's not to say, I mean, we have, when the kids come to the rink, they have to, we have what we call phone motels, right? They have to put their phones in the in the phone motel, and there's a very stiff penalty for having your phone in the locker room. So it's the one time in their life, where in their day, where they don't have their phones. So I've heard a new slogan coming out. Even I heard the girls saying it the other day. So it seems like it's catching, where they said, "Hang up and hang out." You know. So I think it's starting to get into where the kids are starting to understand it. Like, we have specific rules when we have a team function, when we have a team meal, the phones go away, and our school doesn't allow phones in the classroom. And there was a book out recently called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt that's really gotten a lot of traction in terms of sort of an understanding of the effect that phones have on this generation. But I think we are fortunate at Shattuck, where we have the expectation and tradition of how you're supposed to conduct yourself at the rink. We have the kind of kids that, are driven to be great hockey players, and so that really helps us.
I have a question about coaching.
Sure.
Islanders last night in the afternoon, they played Buffalo at home, and it was 1-0 for Buffalo. And in the last minute of the first period, Buffalo attacked, and the first line of the Islanders did not back check well, and a goal was scored at a very, very critical time at the end of the first period. I don't have to tell you about that. As a result of that, in the third period, Patrick Roy, the coach of the Islanders, benched that entire first line for the entire period. That, to me, is going to be a turning point one way or the other for the team. What would you have done? Or what do you think of what he did?
Well, I heard Patrick Waugh talk about that, and he said earlier in the game, and I think he called out one of his star players in the media too, which they don't normally do, but he didn't really call him out. He said, well, for example, he back checked hard earlier in the game, and I complimented him for that. And then he said, you're going to make mistakes, and I can handle that, but back checking does not require skill, it requires will. And so he knows his players better than I do, right? Obviously. And so I don't think, I mean, and he's, whatever, quote unquote, an old school kind of a coach, but he seems to have adapted pretty well to the younger athletes as well. So I think he probably has a sense that while this might, set them back a little bit, in the near term, it's all about, now the last whatever third of the season, where you have to make a run. So, I think my bet would be that this is going to help the team because you there are times as a coach where you have to, it's not equal. It's not equal ice, right? It's not about equal. It's not necessarily even about fairness per se, right? But everybody has to understand that there is a standard, and this is our standard. And I think if you fall short of the standard and allow your top players to fall short of the standard, kind of what we talked to previously, Stan, at the end of the day, it's your 5 and 6D, the minutes that those guys are able to log that's going to put you over the top. It's your ability to play that fourth line, into the second half of the game when the game is close. And I think that, by holding those guys accountable, I think it's going to make the whole group feel more part of it. And this is whatever. This is I have noticed over the years, and I tell the girls this, when there are times when you win a championship and you have the big old banner photo, right? That I don't know when that banner photo first became popular, Stan. You might know more than I do, but so there's a traditional banner photo. And I tell the girls right away, what our goal is to not have any fake smiles in the banner photo, right? Like the kid that maybe got skipped over, in the last part of the game so that we could win, but they're buying into what the team, wants. And, yeah.
Gordon, I don't know if you followed the Leafs, but did you see Berube? He had a gym accident and came back with like 50 stitches on his head to coach the next day. What do you think of his style? He seems pretty old school, eh?
Oh man, well I played, I don't know if I actually played against him, but yeah, he is right around my same age, and he's one of those guys again that is just a genuine guy who believes in hard work and has been part of the, I think he was part of the Flyers during their kind of heyday too. So, that says something right there. So, yeah, I mean there's just an inherent toughness in hockey players. I mean that's just part of the game, and him kind of modeling that, and just the fact that here's a guy in his mid 60s that's working out so hard that he's going to drop a weight that's going to get him to 20 stitches. That's got to be an inspiration right there.
And he kind of just shrugged it off. He was like, oh, that's nothing. I mean, 50 stitches on his head and it's nothing.
He didn't say. We don't know what happened. Do you know what happened? Was it
No, I don't know. I don't know what happened. No.
But what did the Toronto papers? What are all these guys in Toronto? Did they find out what happened?
No, it's an undisclosed injury. Berube said it was a gym accident, but beyond that, nobody really knows. I mean, what has to happen for you to end up with an injury like that?
I still lift weights at my, and you can, you know, I've seen people before, you know, where you're doing like clean and jerks or something like that, and you bring the bar down too fast, you know, and it hits you on the nose, or, you know, there, you know, if you're, you know, if you're doing working with machines and that's one thing, but if you're doing, you know, if you're doing barbells and dumbbells and that, and flinging them around, I mean, those things, that weight doesn't lie, you know,
How
so I
much
can,
weight do you have to lift to have an injury like that?
well, you know, I depends on, you know, gravity is an unbelievable thing. So if you got 65 pounds over your head and you drop it on your head, that's yeah, you're going to learn about gravity very fast. Yeah.
You know, a guy put out a book a time ago. It was a great book called The Game I'll Never Forget. Tell me, Gordy, what's the game you'll never forget?
Well, actually, that's part of my one of the things that I wrote in my book is that kind of encapsulated everything. It was a current U.S. Olympic goalie, Aaron Frankel, was our goalie, and we were in a national championship game. So it was for the national championship. It was in overtime. We were killing a penalty, and our defenseman Mac Lange closed her hand on the puck in the crease. So the referee had no choice. I mean, it was obvious. She said, "Coach, I did it." You know, that's girls again, right? Coach, I did it. So we had a penalty shot in a national championship in overtime, and I asked Aaron Frankel, the goalie, I said, boy, you know, because she made the save, and then we came down like a minute later and scored and won. So that was like, oh my gosh, that was like the lowest to the highest. But this is how she thinks, right? She said, well, coach, she was a lefty. She picked up the puck and immediately went to my right. So I knew she was going to deke. So all I had to do was be patient on the poke check. Simple as that. She knew the second that girl picked up the puck and went to her right, that the girl was not going to shoot, that she was going to deke. So, you know, and that was just amazing to me. Both you know, being cool under pressure, and you know, and as the coach, I really do think your players are going to reflect your emotion. You know, so you have to, regardless of what you're feeling, you know, you have to project confidence, and you have to project, you know, that we're going to get through this and we're going to win. So, but yeah, that game, that national championship game, I will remember for sure.
Former goalie, I can tell you that I've been in that situation, and you have to want to be there. You have to relish that challenge. So, yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to ask you your prep teams. How are the goalies?
We have we had there was the U18 World Championships up in Nova Scotia, and we had the U18 Canadian goalie, and we have the U18 American goalie. So our goaltending is pretty good. Yeah, we've got good goaltending. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, and they're both unbelievable kids. Goalie partners, they're just great. Just yeah, they're kind of the adults in the room on the team, and that's a different thing. It's not very often that a goalie is actually your leader. You know, the goalies can be, because it's hard for the goalie to be the leader, right? But these two are just. Morgan Stickney is the female is the American goalie. She's going to Penn State, and then Rowan Howling is our Canadian, and she's going to Ohio State. And yeah, they're really good. We also have this girl Jane Daly, who is just I think she's going to develop into a generational player. You kind of heard it here first, but yeah, she recently set a record at the under-18 championships for goals in the tournament. So yeah, I mean, but it's the team. You know, we've got good players, And but they get along well. It makes it fun to come to the rink. So yeah, we got a good team again.
All right, we're running out of time, guys. It has become a tradition on the show that Maeve closes us out with a joke.
I have a generational joke. How about that?
Amazing.
And the generational joke is, I'm 93 years old, and this joke is about a 93-year-old guy. How about that? So this
All right.
93-year-old guy is sitting on a bench in Central Park, Manhattan, and all of a sudden a frog jumps up and it's on his lap. And the guy looks down at the frog, and the frog looks up at the guy, and the frog says to the guy, if you kiss me on my lips, I will become the most beautiful girl in the world, and you can have me for the rest of your life. And the guy takes the frog and he puts it in his pocket, and he takes a walk down the end of the frog, sits down on another bench, and the frog sticks his head out of the guy's pocket. He says, mister, didn't you hear what I just said? He said, you just kissed me on my lips, and I'll be with you as a beautiful girl for the rest of my life and your life. And the guy picks up the frog and he looks at the frog and he says, you know something? At my age, I'd rather have a talking frog. Thanks for coming, pal.
Thank you so much, Gordon. Thank you for joining us. Big thanks as always to Stan and Jerry. And thank you to everyone listening and watching. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to Bottle Rocket, follow us on socials, and we'll catch you next time.